In today's video, I'll be simulating 5 AFL seasons with the promotion and relegation rules. If you don't know how the promotion and relegation system works, let's take something like the English Premier League for example. The 3 clubs that finish on the bottom of the table will be relegated into the AFL Championship or the tier below. Now, Tier 2 works like this. First and second are promoted into the Premier League next season, while the remaining top 6 clubs from 3rd to 6th will be going to a tournament bracket to see who makes that final promotion spot. And same as before, the 3 bottom clubs get relegated to League 1 or Tier 3. The process pretty much stays the same. So here's how the AFL promotion and relegation system works. You have Tier 1 being the AFL, Tier 2 being the ACFL, which is called the Australian Challenger Football League, Tier 3 ADFS, Australian Development Football Series, I really didn't have a name, and Tier 4 will be the ARFL, Australian Regional Football League. So how does each tier work? Well, the AFL tier will consist of the current 18 clubs battling it out, with the bottom 3 being relegated into Tier 2. As usual, the top 8 clubs will play in the finals with the same format. Tier 2 will have 20 clubs competing. These clubs will be filled out to start off with from the VFL, the SANFL, the WAFL, the QAFL, the NTFL, and despite both now gone, the TSL and also the NEAFL. Now you might be thinking, what happens to players playing in the reserves clubs? Well, they'll probably return to their respective regional footy clubs, but you never really know, but let's just say that's the case in this. Tier 2 will also include a wildcard round for finals, meaning clubs from 7th to 10th have to play in a play-in tournament to get the final 2 final spots. Tier 3 is the same as Tier 2, but this time instead of 20 teams, we have 24, which is, of course, pretty hectic. And Tier 4 is a unique one. As we mentioned, there are still state leagues in play here. So let's take the VFL, SANFL, WAFL, QAFL, NTFL, TSL, AFL Canberra, and revive the NEAFL, and then we have 8 leagues. The top 2 clubs from each state league will go into a grand final to determine who gets to have the chance to make the 8-team finals bracket. Alright, so for an example, let's just say that these are the other winners of the league matches. They are completely randomised. The 2 clubs that make it to the league grand final are automatically promoted into Tier 3, with the premiership still won. The loser of that league final will still be promoted as they made it all the way and won the prelim. The 2 losing prelim teams then go head-to-head for the last promotion spot. And from now on, there are no more relegation spots, which means clubs just stay in their regional leagues. Now you're probably thinking, oh yeah, he's just going to make the best teams win, right? Well, no, this is going to be decided by a thing called chance. I reckon you might have heard of it. Last thing I want to go through is that let's just say an AFL club gets relegated to Tier 2. To make it, I guess, a little bit more accurate, their chance to get promoted back into Tier 1 is going to be a lot higher than any other teams. Anyway, with all that out of the way, if we get 100 likes on this video, I'll do another 5 years from 2031 to 2035, and we'll go from there. So, without further ado, let's start. Oh, subscribe as well, we're on the road to 3K. Thank you. And so, the AFL promotion and relegation system again. Let's have a look and see how all 18 teams went in the first season. And so the ladder finished as follows. It was West Coast and North Melbourne that finished first and second. I cannot see a day in 2026 when that ever happens. GWS Essendon to round out the top 4, finishing 3rd and 4th. Geelong in 5th with Hawthorn, Collingwood and Adelaide to round out the top 8. With St Kilda in Richmond's spot in 9th, but the Tigers finishing 10th as well. Fremantle, Gold Coast and Sydney from 11th to 13th. And having a collapse of a year was the Western Bulldogs in 15th and Port Adelaide in 14th. And getting relegated in what was even more a collapse of a season, the Lions, who finished 17th after winning the premiership. Carlton and Melbourne also with the Lions as well, and will be relegated to Tier 2 next season. And as for the grand final winners, it was North Melbourne. I don't know how they've done. How has Alistair Clarkson coached North Melbourne from 17th to 3rd and then to a premiership? The Roos beat Geelong 159 to 80, which I don't think will ever be a score in any of these. And here is our first look at the ACFL Tier 2 teams. We've got Glenelg, Sturt, North Adelaide, Central District Bulldogs, Woodville West Torrens Eagles, Box Hill, Port Melbourne Borough, Werribee Tigers, Williamstown Seagulls, Coburg Lions, Claremont Tigers, West Perth Falcons, Northern Bombers, Western District Football Club Saints, Southern District Crocs, Clarence Kangaroos, Broadbeach Cats, Nightcliff Tigers, Lauderdale Bombers and Launceston Blues. Let's have a look at the ladder. And so the first season, we have a lot of treats for you. Nightcliff, Broadbeach Cats and North Adelaide Roosters are the ones that are going down to Tier 3 next season, with Werribee and Sturt, who just missed out on the relegation zone, luckily for them. Port Melbourne in 15th with Lauderdale, Launceston and Central District Bulldogs, with the Southern District Crocs just missing out on the playing spot. But making the playing spot was Box Hill, surprisingly, with Williamstown and West Perth as well, along with Glenelg. But making it all the way to the finals was Claremont, Woodville West Torrens, Western District Saints, with North Launceston Bombers as well, and automatically promoted into the AFL next year is the Clarence Roos and Coburg Lions. Oh yeah, and before I go into finals, I just want to mention as well, if a team finishes third, they're not officially guaranteed a spot into the top tier next year. They do have to either win the flag or hope that first or second takes out the flag so that it secures their spot, because if not, let's just say for this example, Claremont win the flag from 6th. That means that they would get the spot over North Launceston. So it's really anyone's game that finishes 3rd to 10th. As for the wildcard round, it was Box Hill that won by 75 points and Williamstown that won by 41 to advance to the final series. And for our actual finals, Coburg beat Western Districts by 57 points, North Launceston took care of Clarence by 58, Woodville West Torrens beat Williamstown by 39, and also Claremont demolished Box Hill by 60 points. The first week of finals was hectic. As for the semi-finals, it was Claremont that absolutely demolished Western Districts again, losing by 83 points, and Clarence losing to Woodville by 7. And heading to the grand final was Coburg and North Launceston getting wins over Woodville West Torrens by 21 and Claremont by 44. And in probably what will be the best grand final you will see in today's video, it was Coburg that beat North Launceston by 3 points to advance to the Tier 1 next year. But I guess as well, even though North Launceston did lose this grand final, they still finished 3rd and Coburg finished 1st and won the flag, so that still means that them, Clarence and North Launceston will be in the AFL next season. And welcome to Tier 3 with 24 clubs. I'm not going to name them all because I'm lazy. But if you can't already tell, I've added Bendigo Golden here, who aren't actually a team anymore, but thought nonetheless for city's sakes, let's just add them in anyway, along with Fitzroy, Geelong Amateur, Goodwood, Wangaratta Rovers, Northern Bullants now, unfortunately not a VFL team anymore. Got the Port Adelaide Magpies, I thought I'd add them in because why not. Sajuna Blues, Banks Bulldogs, Jabiru Bombers, the list goes on and on. Let's begin. Man, with 24 teams, the lad has very limited space here. Port Adelaide, Fitzroy and Belconnen all went down with a fair bit to go, finishing in the relegation zone, with Northern, Jabiru, Sydney University and South Adelaide barely surviving the zone, with Peel, Geelong, Perth and Glenorchy having a pretty average season, and Subiaco, Frankston and Kingborough just missing out on the wild card spot. Surprisingly, Bendigo on their first season as a club finished in the top 10, with Southport, Coffs Harbour and Wangaratta Rovers as well getting the wild card chance, and finishing in the finals we have the Seduna Blues, Goodwood Saints, Tuggeranong Valley Football Club, Hobart Tigers, and officially promoted to Tier 2 are the Banks Bulldogs and Norwood Redlegs. And in the wildcard round, it was Bendigo that beat Wangaratta Rovers by 10 points and Southport as well, the two lower base teams winning in small margins by 10 and 8 points respectively. To the first week of finals, and it was another low margin week as Norwood beat Tuggeranong by 15 points, Hobart cleared Banks by 10 points with Goodwood also beating Southport by 7, and Bendigo in their first ever final beat Seduna by 14 points to move to the semi-finals. Another finals week cleared by yellow as Goodwood sent Tuggeranong out in straight sets as Bendigo did the same for Banks, winning by 11 points. And from 5th spot, Goodwood looking to do the impossible after beating Hobart by 6 points, and Norwood also going through, winning by 43 against Bendigo. And so it's two South Australian clubs that have made the 2026 Tier 3 Grand Final. Can Norwood beat Goodwood, or will Goodwood do the upset and beat Norwood? It's the first one, as Norwood beat Goodwood by 39 points. And to the regional competitions, from Tasmania we have Devonport versus North Hobart. From Northern Territory we have Tracy Village versus Darwin. From the NEAFL we have East Lakes versus Redland Bombers. From the ACT we have the Queanbeyan Tigers versus Ainslie Saints. From Queensland we have Surfers Paradise versus Mount Isa. From WA this time we have East Fremantle versus South Fremantle. From South Australia it's Western United Tigers versus West Adelaide Bloods. And from Victoria it is Ballarat versus Sandringham. Let's have a look at the final results. And I should just say as well, these matchups were completely randomised, but here is what we got. North Hobart took care of Tracy Village, winning that game, with Redland losing to Ainslie as well. Surfers Paradise lost to South Fremantle, with Western United also going down to VFL club Sandringham. In the next week of the finals, it was Ainslie that make it to the league grand final, beating North Hobart, who will play in the promotion final, along with South Fremantle, who were defeated by Sandringham. But in the promotion final, North Hobart will be staying down in the local leagues, as South Fremantle, Ainslie and Sandringham all go up to the next tier, with Sandringham taking out the league grand final. Oh my gosh, I can't speak after that. The year is now 2027 with three major changes. As you can tell, Brisbane, Carlton and also Melbourne are no longer in the league, as they are replaced by Coburg, Clarence and Northern Bombers. Every other team staying the same. Let's find out how they perform in their first season in the top tier. Well, it was a short-lived stay for Clarence, as them, Richmond and Port Adelaide will be relegated to Tier 2 next season. Coburg, Essendon and North Melbourne barely surviving that relegation zone, with St Kilda, Freo, Adelaide and a surprise team, Northern Bombers, finished 9th. And the other clubs just having a pretty average season and just missing out on the top 8. But making the top 8 was the West Coast Eagles, GWS, Hawthorn, Sydney, Geelong, Western Bulldogs, Gold Coast, and finishing on top was the Collingwood Magpies. And back on the topic of Collingwood, they beat Geelong by 11 points in the qualifying final to advance to the prelim, along with the Western Bulldogs, who also get a home prelim spot, beating Gold Coast by 27. Sydney eliminated the Eagles by 33, and GWS also eliminating Hawthorn by 21. The Cats got their redemption against the Swans by 14 points, and the Giants going through to the prelim final after beating Gold Coast by 19 points. And yet again, it's the Cats going through to the grand final after beating the Western Bulldogs by 16 points, and similar to the semi-final a couple years ago, Collingwood beat GWS by 10 points to also advance. And it was these two Victorian clubs that took on each other in the 2027 AFL Grand Final, Collingwood and Geelong. The winners were the minor premiers by 12 points, Geelong making it a record 3 consecutive grand final losses. Well, what a different look this is. We got Melbourne, Carlton and Brisbane from the AFL in Tier 2 at the moment, alongside the other clubs that were in from the season prior, but obviously some clubs looking to improve from the last year. Let's have a look at how they performed. Well, what a season it was, and we saw Williamstown, Hobart and a surprise in Box Hill also getting relegated into Tier 3, with Sturt and Claremont also surviving that relegation spot. Norwood, Western Districts, Banks and also Central having a pretty average season, with Glenelg just missing out on that final spot from percentage, with Woodville, Launceston, Brisbane and Werribee making the wildcard spot. And for our clubs that actually did make the finals, Lauderdale, a surprise team that finished in 6th, with Melbourne, West Perth and Carlton just missing out on the automatic promotion spot, and automatically getting promoted next year was Southern District Crocs and Port Melbourne Borough. Now, I'm not really going to do this again, but I thought I would. The flag winners. Werribee won it from 7th. The Werribee Tigers won the premiership from 7th, which means, even though Carlton finished 3rd, they didn't win the flag, which means Werribee get that final promotion spot. But now let's talk about their journey and how they won the flag. They started by beating Woodville West Torrens by 17 points, while Brisbane also beat Launceston by 22. In finals week 1, Port Melbourne took care of West Perth by 19, while Carlton went to the prelim final beating Southern District Crocs by 27. Melbourne beat Brisbane by 11 points to go to the semis, along with Werribee as well beating Lauderdale by 15 points. Melbourne got another win over West Perth by 14, and again another elimination final team, Werribee winning by 21 to go and take on Carlton in the prelim. And would you believe it, 2 non-AFL clubs make the grand final, with Port Melbourne beating Melbourne by just 9 points and Werribee from 7th going all the way to the grand final. And as we all know, Werribee went on to beat Port Melbourne and win the flag in incredible fashion by 11 points. Which of course means that Port Melbourne, Southern District Crocs and Werribee will be promoted into the AFL next year. And here's how Tier 3 is looking, with Sandringham, Ainslie and South Fremantle as new arrivals, and from the higher league we had North Adelaide, Broadbeach Cats and Nightcliff Tigers. Let's find out how they went in their first arrival in Tier 3. Well, for the Tier 4 boys, Sandringham, they went down at the first time of asking with the Northern Bull Ants and Wangaratta Rovers as well. Fractionally finishing above the drop was the Goodwood Saints, along with Coffs Harbour, Bendigo, Frankston, Geelong, North Adelaide, Subiaco, Perth, Ainslie, South Adelaide, and missing out on the wildcard spot this year was Tugger Anong Valley. Sydney University and Ceduna, a surprise team this season, making 9th and 10th, with Southport and Broadbeach Cats as well. Excuse that horrific spelling of Broadbeach. Tier 4 club South Fremantle finished 6th in their first season, along with Jabiru, Peel and Nightcliff finishing from 5th to 3rd, and being promoted next year is the 2 Tasmanian clubs Kingborough Tigers and Glenorchy Magpies, dominating the Tier 3 league this year. In the wildcard round, it was Sydney University that beat Broadbeach by 17 points, while Southport took care of Ceduna by 24 points. And then in the first week of finals, Glenorchy and Kingborough advanced to home prelim finals in Tasmania, with Glenorchy beating Peel by 21 and Kingborough beating Nightcliff by 28 points. In our elimination finals, South Fremantle beat Sydney University by 15 and Southport going to the semi-finals after beating Jabiru by 32 points. In the semi-finals, it was yet again the elimination final teams beating the top 4 clubs Nightcliff and Peel, with Southport beating Peel by 19 points and South Fremantle beating Nightcliff by 26. Don't ask me how this has happened. I have no clue how the heck this has happened, but South Fremantle advanced to the grand final with Southport after they beat Glenorchy by 22 and Southport beating Kingborough by 14. I don't even know how this has happened, but 6th versus 8th in the grand final, South Fremantle versus Southport, and the winner of the 2027 Tier 3 grand final was South Fremantle by 11 points and will be advancing to Tier 2 next season. There are a lot of clubs here from Tier 4 that I have no idea how to pronounce their names properly, so here's the first week of results from each state league, and let's go to what each club finished at. Well, actually, I didn't have the fully results, I only had the winners for each league, but it turns out Penguin, Rochester, and also Surfers Paradise are going up to Tier 3 next year. Pennant Hills unfortunately just missed out due to their loss to Penguin and losing to Surfers Paradise by 23 points. And here is the 2028 teams. As you can probably tell, Tasmania are not a part of this series because it probably screwed the timeline up of this promotion relegation. However, Coburg, Northern Bombers, Port Melbourne Borough, Southern District Crocs and Werribee Tigers are the non-league teams in the AFL at the moment. Let's see if they can get past 2028. Unfortunately, in sad fashion, the Northern Bombers and Southern District Crocs went down with the GWS Giants, but in a shocking twist, Coburg finished 4th on the ladder and made the finals, not to mention get a double chance. However, celebrations were short-lived for Coburg as Geelong beat them by 35 points to advance to a home prelim, along with West Coast as well, winning by 19 against the Western Bulldogs. Hawthorn beat the Suns by 22 and St Kilda also beat Fremantle by 14 points. And what a run it was for Coburg, but unfortunately they just couldn't get over the line against Hawthorn, losing by 31. And St Kilda as well, a surprise team making the prelim also, winning by 16 against the Western Bulldogs. And an incredible milestone for Geelong, making it 4 consecutive grand finals, along with Hawthorn, who have surprisingly made it from 5th, beating West Coast by 12 points. It's the two rivals in the grand final, Geelong and Hawthorn. Can it be the minor premiers winning the flag against their rivals, or will Hawthorn come over the line and beat Geelong, making it 4 consecutive grand final losses? But not this time. Geelong got the job done by 16 against Hawthorn and took out their 11th flag. And here's the Tier 2 lineup. Can you believe a quarter of Tier 2 is filled with AFL clubs? Literally incredible. With the teams promoted last season from the lower league being Glenorchy, Kingborough and South Fremantle, and the one exception from the higher league being Clarence, and the 2 AFL clubs Port Adelaide and Richmond. Let's have a look at the ladder. Richmond nearly got relegated to Tier 3. That would have been incredible. However, they did stay up and quite comfortably too in 17th spot, with Claremont, West Perth and Glenorchy from 14th to 16th. Lauderdale, South Fremantle and Cert just missing out on that wild card spot. Brisbane once again can't seem to get up into the top 6, finishing 9th, and with Kingborough, Woodville West Torrens and Clarence in there as well, making the wildcard rounds. And in the top 6, it was Banks, Glenelg, Carlton, Port Adelaide, Melbourne, and topping the ladder was the Western District Saints, who will get promotion into the AFL next season, along with Melbourne as well. Kicking things off with the wildcard round, obviously, and the 2 Tasmanian clubs, Kingborough and Clarence, went at it, with Kingborough getting the job done by 20 points, and Brisbane proving worthy, still beating Woodville West Torrens by 27. After finishing minor premiers, Western Districts could not build on it and lost to Carlton by 25, giving Carlton the home prelim spot, with Melbourne as well also grabbing a prelim spot at the MCG, winning by 16 against Port Adelaide. Brisbane continued their great form in finals, beating Glenelg by 29, and Kingborough beating Banks by 23 points to advance to the semis. Once again, the semi-finals saw the 2 elimination final teams getting the job done. Western Districts, the first place team, going out in straight sets thanks to Kingborough losing by 29 points. And the 2 AFL clubs, Port Adelaide and Brisbane, went head-to-head, and Brisbane got the win by 21. And it looks like an extra AFL club is going up next year, with Carlton and Melbourne making the grand final after beating Kingborough by 12, and Brisbane going down to Melbourne by 9 in incredible games of football. 2 AFL Giants and Victorian Titans. It's Melbourne and Carlton in the grand final. The Blues need to win in order to be promoted, and Melbourne need to win in order to save Port Adelaide's promotion spot. And the winner of the grand final was the Melbourne Footy Club by 15 points. Very unfortunate for Carlton, being a big Victorian club, but unfortunately they will not be going up this year to the big league. Here's 2028 Tier 3, and we have some new inclusions, of course. From the lower tier, it's the Rochester Tigers, Penguin Two Blues, and I said Rochester, very weird, and Surfers Paradise Demons. And from the higher tier, it was Box Hill, Hobart Tigers, and Williamstown Seagulls. Let's go to the ladder. In incredible fashion, Surfers Paradise have earned themselves back-to-back promotions, going to Tier 2 next season with Sydney University, but unfortunately the relegated teams this year were Rochester, Perth and Williamstown yet again. Goodwood and Seduna surviving in 20th and 21st, with Geelong Amateur, Penguin, Southport and Box Hill as well. Bendigo Gold, Subiaco and Broadbeach having pretty okay seasons, with Nightcliff, Frankston just missing out on the wildcard spots. Ainsley picked themselves up to finish 10th, with Coffs Harbour, Jabiru and Tuggeranong Valley as well. North Adelaide, Peel, South Adelaide and Hobart make the top 6, and obviously, as mentioned before, it's Sydney University and Surfers Paradise that automatically go to Tier 2 next season. In the wildcard round, Ainsley beat Tuggeranong by 26 points to advance, while Coffs Harbour also advanced, beating Jabiru by 19 points. Finals week 1 saw South Adelaide pull off the upset against Surfers Paradise by 22 points, Sydney University getting the upper hand over Hobart by 17, Peel convincingly beating Coffs Harbour by 21, while North Adelaide took care of Ainslie by 13 points. In the second week, Surfers Paradise lost to Peel by 16 points at home, while North Adelaide also took care of Hobart away, meaning once again the elimination final teams got the upper hand over the top 4 teams that lost in the qualifying final. Unfortunately though, Peel and North Adelaide couldn't do the triple after losing to South Adelaide by 11 and Sydney University by 14 points to advance to the 2028 Grand Final. The 2 grand finalists, we have South Adelaide and obviously Sydney University as well. South Adelaide looking for a first premiership since 1964 and Sydney University looking for a first flag since... I don't really know. I only had South Adelaide. Because South Adelaide won the flag by 18 points against Sydney University and will be promoted into Tier 2 next season. And the last group of 2028 is obviously the Tier 4 division. And we've got a couple of new teams in here this year, a couple ones that you've seen before, but let's have a look at how each team performed. In the first game between Latrobe and Woolston Grange Gorillas, it was Latrobe that got the upper hand over the Woolston Grange Gorillas in Port Noarlunga and the Mango Pla Cookadinia United East Lakes Goannas. What the fuck? The Goannas got the win by 15 points, while in the other game between Kyabram and South Bunbury, it was South Bunbury winning by 35 points, and in Palmerston versus East Lakes, it was Palmerston winning by 38 points to move into Week 2. And speaking of Week 2, Latrobe versus Goannas, Latrobe a convincing 44-point win, while South Bunbury beat Palmerston by 35 points to advance to the League Grand Final, while these two will play in the promotion final, and in the promotion final, it was Palmerston that beat Goannas by a convincing 8 points. But the League Grand Final was a shock as Latrobe beat South Bunbury by 40 points to also advance to the Tier 3 season in 2029. Tier 1 relatively stays the same, with Coburg staying up of course and Port Melbourne as well, along with Werribee who finished 10th, and Western Districts being the only new club from Tier 2 or even any tier prior to be promoted into the AFL this season. Every other club remains the same and are in the shot to win the AFL Premiership for 2029. Let's go to the ladder. That is truly heartbreaking for me. Geelong got relegated to Tier 2, and along with St Kilda and Coburg as well, who finished 16th and 18th, with Geelong finishing 17th. Port Melbourne survived with North, Werribee and Gold Coast also, along with Essendon, Melbourne and Port Adelaide just missing out on the top 8. And in the top 8, well, I can already see an absolute shock. How did Western Districts finish 3rd? The Doggies, Sydney, Adelaide and West Coast are in the elimination finals, with Hawthorn, Western Districts in 3rd, Collingwood came 2nd and Fremantle are on top somehow, and that's a ladder for 2029. In the qualifying finals, it was Fremantle and Collingwood that moved to home prelims after winning by 34 against Hawthorn and 40 against Western Districts. The Western Bulldogs beat West Coast by 17 points, and Sydney obliterating Adelaide at home by 48 to advance to the semis. And a little bit of history here in the semi-finals, starting with Hawthorn beating the Western Bulldogs by 28, but that isn't the history. It is Western Districts becoming the first non-AFL team to win a final in the top tier and advance to the prelims. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what to say here. Western Districts are in an AFL Grand Final with Hawthorn, both clubs winning by 18 points and advancing. But can Western Districts be the first non-AFL team to win the premiership in the top tier? Let's find out now. Western Districts did not win the Grand Final. Hawthorn got the job done by 35 points fairly convincingly. It's said here from this simulation that Hawthorn led all game as well, which is no surprise to a new coming Western District side. But what a season they had. Credit to them. A team from, I think it's Kangaroo Island, believe it or not. Fair play. Anyway, it's time to look at the Tier 2 list. Tier 2, I really don't have all that much to say about it, but if you're an AFL fan of Richmond, Carlton, Brisbane and GWS, let's find out if your club can get back up to the AFL next season. Unfortunate for Glenorchy, South Adelaide and Glenelg, they'll be heading down to Tier 3 next season, with Southern Crocs nearly getting relegated after being an AFL club not long ago, with Claremont in 16th, Woodville West Torrens in 15th, Surfers, Northern, Kingborough and Carlton, who also just miss out on the wildcard spot, which is incredible for an AFL club. They will not be going up to the top tier next season, but with a chance of going up to the top tier next season is South Fremantle, Sturt, Lauderdale and Clarence, and finishing in the top 6 is Sydney University, West Perth, GWS, Brisbane, and automatically promoted to Tier 1 is Richmond and Banks. The wildcard round saw both South Fremantle and Sturt get wins to move to the final series, beating Clarence by 45 and Lauderdale by 8. The two clubs yet again getting wins over West Perth and Sydney University, Sturt beating West Perth by 11 and South Fremantle a 1-point win away from home is incredible as well, with Banks and Richmond also advancing to home prelim finals after beating GWS and Brisbane. The incredible run of Sturt continues after beating AFL club GWS by 24 points. South Fremantle nearly getting another upset win over a big club, but this time it was Brisbane's turn to advance to a prelim final. And it's the two winners of the semi-final that are advancing to a grand final. It was Brisbane that beat Banks in a hard-fought game by a goal, and Sturt that went to Punt Road and beat, actually, probably not Punt Road, probably going to be played at the MCG. Sturt beat Richmond by 41 points and advancing to the grand final to take on Brisbane for that last spot in the AFL tier next season. Can Brisbane return to their perch, or will the 9th place Sturt Double Blues become just the second team to win the flag while being in the wildcard rounds? Unfortunately for Sturt, it's Brisbane that win it by 35 points and advance to the AFL next season. And here's our lineup for Tier 3 in 2029. It pretty much stays the same, obviously, with the 3 promoted and 3 relegated. A couple of new ones in there, but let's find out how they went in their first appearance in the 2014 Tier 3 competition. Very unfortunate for Tuggeranong Valley, Geelong Amateur and Latrobe, who only just got promoted, finishing 22nd to 24th. Palmerston and Seduna just missing out on the relegation zone, with Frankston, Central Districts, Box Hill and Coffs Harbour from 16th all the way to 21st. Some okay seasons from Broadbeach, Ainsley, Subiaco, and unfortunately for Peel, they just missed out on the wildcard spot, which went to Penguin instead. Along with that, there's Goodwood, Hobart and Bendigo making an appearance in the top 7, with Nightcliff, North Adelaide, Jabiru and Southport getting the final spot, and Launceston and South Bunbury, which will be in Tier 2 in 2030. Let's find out who gets that last spot from the finals. The 2 games in the wildcard round were a cracker, with Penguin getting over the line against Bendigo by just a goal, and Goodwood defeating Hobart by 11 to advance to finals week 1. In our qualifying finals from week 1, South Bunbury again getting another win over Jabiru by a massive 40 points. Southport pulling off an upset against Launceston by 2. In North Adelaide and Goodwood, it was North Adelaide by 23 and Penguin continuing their playoff run by 14. I don't even know why I said playoff. Penguin won by 14 points against Nightcliff to advance. Although their run comes to an end as other Tasmanian club Launceston beat them by 20 points to set them out, and Jabiru heading to their first prelim final ever after winning by 8 points against North Adelaide. And Jabiru's chances of going to Tier 2 next season are gone, as Southport beat them by 27 to automatically get that promotion spot after making the grand final, along with South Bunbury, who beat Launceston by 15 points to also make it. Although the result is irrelevant, we still need to crown a Tier 3 champion for 2029, and this year it is Southport, who finished 3rd and win the flag, beating first place South Bunbury by a whopping 42 points, which is the biggest grand final margin win of any club on any of these lists so far. And here are our clubs fighting for the Tier 4 Premiership. There are some new ones in there, of course, Burnie included, and of course more around different state leagues around Australia. Let's go to the final results. Well, in a brief summary, in a spectacular event, 3 Magpie teams are going to Tier 3 next season. Tier 3 has been a bit of a pain to handle so far, so we're just going to quickly cut it short. It was Devonport and Western Magpies in the grand final, or Sherwood I should say, that beat Devonport in the grand final by 14 points. And Port Adelaide finally getting out of Tier 4 and defeating Darwin by 83 points, which I didn't think they had that in them, but they did. It's 3 Magpie teams to Tier 3 in 2030. And speaking of 2030, it's time for the last time to simulate the final year of football. Let's find out what happens. And so the AFL enters the 2030s, and we have a lot of treats for you, with Banks, Port Melbourne, Borough, Western Districts and Werribee from the non-founding AFL clubs. Western Districts, they've definitely made a name for themselves, but can they keep going, or will another club, maybe even an original AFL club, will make a statement for themselves? Let's find out. Unfortunate for Banks and Werribee and also Melbourne, who will not be in the AFL come 2031. West Coast just surviving in 15th spot with Essendon in 14th. Hawthorn, Freo, Sydney having pretty average seasons. North Melbourne getting back up there in 10th. And Brisbane just missing the 8 in 9th. Port Melbourne, what about them making the 8 for the first time ever in the AFL series? Adelaide and Port Adelaide will be playing each other in the elimination final, with the Western Bulldogs also playing Port Melbourne in 5th. Western Districts proving it wasn't a fluke and finishing 4th, with Richmond in 3rd, jumping straight back up to the top 4, and Gold Coast finishing 2nd, and Collingwood once again finishing 1st in 2030. Now, I'm going to tell you who won the flag first before getting in the finals. 3, 2... Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. Now, I promise on my entire YouTube channel, I did not rig this. Port Melbourne genuinely won the AFL flag, and here's their journey to winning the 2030 AFL Premiership. Western Districts got themselves to a home prelim final after beating minor premiers Collingwood by 10 points, along with Gold Coast also getting a home prelim, beating Richmond by 7. Port Melbourne, the story of this final series, beating the Western Bulldogs by 30, and Port Adelaide obliterating Adelaide, their rivals, in the elimination final by 62 to advance to the semi-finals. The two ports of both Melbourne and Adelaide got the job done against the minor premiers Collingwood by 45, which was done by Port Melbourne, and Port Adelaide getting the win over Richmond by 38 points. And proving all the haters wrong, it is the two elimination final teams, Port Adelaide and Port Melbourne, yet again raising the bar. Sadly for Western Districts, they could not make the grand final, losing to Port Adelaide by 12, and Gold Coast unfortunately couldn't make their first grand final appearance, losing to Port Melbourne by 12. 6th versus 8th in the grand final. I would not have picked this in a million years to happen. It's the Ports of Adelaide and the Ports of Melbourne that are going head to head in the AFL grand final. And as you all know, the story of this final series was Port Melbourne winning the flag by 29 points against Port Adelaide. And obviously, the first non-founding AFL team to win the premiership, and the first team to win it from 8th as well, which is a remarkable achievement for Port Melbourne and I guess all their fans around the country. It's time to go to Tier 2. What an achievement. It's crazy to believe it. In the last simulation today for Tier 2, South Fremantle and South Bunbury have made it all the way from Tier 4, in fact their local league, to make it all the way to this high of a tier. And now it's time to find out if Geelong, Carlton, St Kilda, GWS or even someone else can go all the way up to Tier 1 in 2031. Let's find out. Unfortunately for South Fremantle, that Tier 2 glory is short-lived, along with Lauderdale and Woodville West Torrens, who are going down to Tier 3 in 2031. Service Paradise and Sydney University, and also Sturt as well, nearly getting in their spot instead, with Launceston and Southern District Crocs, who can't get back up to Tier 1, and St Kilda, who also can't get back up to AFL standard. The AFL club finishing 12th is unbelievable, and Northern Bombers too can't get up to Tier 1, with Carlton finishing 10th, South Bunbury in 9th, Clarence and GWS in 7th. Coburg still doing a good job in 6th spot, with Kingborough and Claremont in 4th. West Perth just missing out on the automatic promotion, but Geelong and Southport of all teams are getting the promotion and the call-up to the AFL in 2031. But of course, there is still finals we have to get to see who gets that last promotion spot. Between GWS and Carlton, it was GWS that eliminated the Blues by 18 points, and South Bunbury continuing their incredible run of the last 2-3 years, killing Clarence by 53 points away. The top two sides proving their dominance in Southport and Geelong, beating Claremont by 22 points and Geelong defeating West Perth by 30. South Bunbury yet again raising the bar, winning by 39 points against Kingborough, and Coburg demolishing the GWS Giants by 50 points in an incredible comeback. Honestly, I was hoping South Bunbury could pull it off again, but not this time. Claremont eliminate them by 25 points, and Coburg sending West Perth out in straight sets, winning by 7 points. And through the prelim finals, it's Coburg that are going to get the chance to be promoted to the AFL next season, beating Geelong by 25 points at GMHBA Stadium. And Southport, an already promoted club, are going to the grand final as well, beating Claremont by 26. Southport are already promoted to the AFL, but can Coburg join them? The answer to that question is no, they cannot. Southport getting the win by 20 points. In fact, they were down at half-time by 10, but that still didn't stop them from winning the game. It's Southport, Geelong, and I kind of forgot the other one, these guys. They're promoted to the AFL in 2031. The wildcard game saw Port Adelaide and Sherwood, both Magpie teams, getting the win by 38 against Ainsley and 28 against Glenorchy. In finals week 1, Jabiru automatically through to a prelim final, beating Peel by 47, while Coffs Harbour also getting a home prelim, beating Goodwood by 6 points. Sherwood once again proving they're not down and out, beating Broadbeach by 18 points, and Subiaco in a great game against Port Adelaide, winning by 3 points. To the Tier 3 semi-final, and Peel go through to the prelim final after beating Sherwood by a convincing 45 points, and Subiaco once again beating Goodwood by 13 points. Off to the grand final is Coffs Harbour beating Peel by 19 points, and Subiaco looking to go all the way, winning in the prelim final against Jabiru, the top place Bombers, by 34 points. 6th versus 2nd in the grand final. Can Subiaco find that last promotion spot, or are Coffs Harbour going to take it away from them and give it to Goodwood instead? In what was a great fought game, it was Coffs Harbour that won the game by 10 points and sealing that last spot for Goodwood, and Subiaco will have to come back and try again another year. On to Tier 4. I feel like going through all the teams this time, which I am going to do. In the Waffle, it was East Perth Royals making their first appearance, going up against a team we've already seen in the Perth Demons. Aspley Hornets and Eastlake Demons also playing each other. Barmera Monash Roos versus the Harndorf Magpies. Noosa Tigers versus Maroochydore Roos. The Northern Bullens making an appearance up against Heidelberg Tigers. In the TSL, it's South Launceston versus Ulverston. In the NTFL, St Mary's versus Waratah. And to finish it off, Molongo Juggernauts versus Western Creek Wildcats. And the final results were as follows. East Perth winning against the Perth Demons while East Lakes took care of Aspley. Barmera Monash by 27 points and Maroochydore also beating Noosa by 35. Heidelberg unfortunately took care of Northern Bullets. I do love the Northern Bullets, and unfortunately they're now out of the VFL. And also out of this league is Ulverston, I should say, who lost to South Launceston by 19 points. St Mary's a convincing win over Waratah, 49 points. And Mullumbimby by 19 against Western Creek Wildcats. Week 2 saw East Lakes beat East Perth by 16. Barmera Monash still going with a 16-point win over Maroochydore. And Heidelberg continued their run with a 42-point win over South Launceston while St Mary's took care of Mullumbimby by 33 points. Into the league grand final, Barmera Monash by 44 against East Lakes while St Mary's also there against Heidelberg by 39. And in the league grand final, Barmera Monash by 36 against St Mary's. And the last promotion spot going to Heidelberg by 27. Very unfortunate for East Lakes. They've made it so close so many times in this series, but they'll have to try again another year. Losing by 27, and Heidelberg are in to the third tier. And so that brings us to the end of today's video, but finally let's have a look at the standings of each team after 2030. In Tier 1, we have Adelaide, Brisbane, Collingwood, Essendon, Fremantle, Geelong, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, North Melbourne, Port Adelaide. Port Melbourne still up there, with Richmond, Southport, Sydney, West Coast, Western Bulldogs, the Western District Saints, what a run they've had, and a new club in West Perth, along with Southport being another new club. In Tier 2, the ACFL, it's the Goodwood Saints, Woodville West Torrens, Melbourne Football Club with the Carlton Blues, Werribee Tigers, Claremont Tigers, South Bunbury Tigers, Surfers Paradise Demons, along with the Southern Crocs, Banks Bulldogs, Jabiru Bombers, Coburg Lions, Kingborough Tigers, Clarence Roos, North Launceston Bombers, Launceston Football Club, the GWS Giants still there as well with Sydney University, Coff Saba, and the St Kilda Saints. Tier 3 with obviously 24 clubs, that being Frankston, Ainsley, Western Magpies, Norwood Redlegs, Bendigo Gold, Woodville West... Wait, what? There must be a glitch there because there's no way they're in this twice. Devonport Magpies, South Fremantle Bulldogs, Port Adelaide Magpies, Glenelg Tigers, Seduna Blues, Lauderdale Bombers, Nightcliff Tigers, Subiaco Lions, Penguin 2 Blues, Hobart Tigers, Box Hill Hawks, Glenorchy Magpies, Broadbeach Cats, South Adelaide Panthers, Peel Thunder, St Mary's Saints, Barmera Monash Roos, and to finish it off, the Heidelberg Tigers. Tier 4 will be unknown until next time. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I don't know how long this has gone for, probably over 40 minutes. Oh my god!